Hey guys, this is episode 35 of Stone and Clay with Taylor Church. You already know who you're talking to. Today's episode will be another solo episode. The other day I got in a little bit of a Twitter battle with some feminists because, is there anything more fun than going back and forth with some angry keyboard warriors? And there's no one angrier than a feminist, a true staunch feminist. And here's the thing, I'm not anti-feminist. I love women. I love their rights. I love most things about them. But usually if you self-identify as a feminist, you're angry. And I don't know why you're so angry. I've got some theories, but that's not what today's episode is about. The point is, in the midst of this Twitter battle that I had engaged in, which I don't usually do, but I made a snarky comment on somebody's tweet who happened to have hundreds of thousands of followers. And I won't get into what I said or what I didn't say or what they said, but a few of this, the main person who tweeted something out, who has all the followers, they of course have all these minions, right? All these people that follow them blindly and will attack anyone that is, saying something contrary to their beliefs, which is great, right? But so one of their little minions said, who's this Taylor Church guy? I looked him up. Looks like he has a solo podcast, so I wouldn't take anything he says seriously or something. And I thought it was so funny, and I just responded, well, if you'd done your research, you'd know that about 70% of my episodes have guests. But even if it was fully a solo podcast, I'm not sure why that's such a good burn, but maybe it is. Maybe I got burned, and I need to make this episode to admit that I've been burned. The funny thing is, I feel like all those intense, rabid, angry feminists and, I call them internet crusaders, these people that think in their head that they're fighting for a cause, but they're really just tweeting and retweeting and, making annoying statuses on Facebook and weird captions on Instagram. They're not really inciting any change. Not that you can't voice your opinion on social media. That's what it's there for, among other things. But these delusional crusaders, you'd think they would be the type of people that would thrive with a solo podcast. Just time to rant and rave by themselves, with nobody to argue with, nobody to tell them their opinions are a bit extreme. But yeah, I got burned. That's the bottom line. I got burned. I'm doing a solo episode like a loser. So that's where we're at. But today I wanted to talk about my trip to Brazil. My last episode, I talked about kind of this whole idea and experience of going back to your mission, where I served my LDS mission. I know a lot of my listeners know, but it's a 2-year thing. You go and you serve the Lord, you're doing church work, you're doing service, you're preaching the good word. You often, depending on where you go, you have to learn a new language. It's a crazy experience, and I talked about it more in my last episode, but it was pretty wild to return after so long. I served my mission in 2006 to 2008, which, if you break down the numbers, it's about 100 years ago. Again, I have never successfully gotten an A in a math class, but I know it was a long time ago. And so I've basically, depending on the area I served in, it's been 13 to 15 years since I've been back. And so I went in with a little bit of trepidation for a few reasons, mainly because of COVID, which I've never been one to stress or overthink or, feel any sort of paranoia about COVID. I already got it. But traveling internationally, obviously my first time during the pandemic, and I definitely got some moral police sliding in my DMs and let me know that they weren't okay with me traveling internationally. Although the plane was fine with it. The pilot didn't say anything. All the people that I visited that were in tears because they haven't seen me for 15 years, didn't know if they'd ever see me again. They didn't seem to have a problem with it. I wasn't arrested by the police. Also, guess what? Spoiler for all the moral police out there. You have to get a negative COVID test to even fly. Okay? So, why are you upset? Why are you mad? Even if you disagree with my actions, which is totally okay. Again, I don't really care. Like, everyone has their opinion, but it's just amusing when people are like, they see somebody doing something that they don't agree with, and all of a sudden, ooh, it's time to send a message, a personal message to somebody I barely know, and tell them I disagree with their actions. But I'm not gonna phrase it that way. What I'm gonna say, I'm gonna do it with a rhetorical question and ask, why do you think that's okay? Why do you think it's okay? It's not even a rhetorical question. It's just a stupid question. And it's funny because you ask a stupid question like that, you're likely going to get a sarcastic answer. My buddy the other day, who is a staunch non-mask wearer, which is fine, and I support him. And he's had COVID too. He's chilling. But he was in the airport and wasn't wearing a mask. And somebody came up to him and said, hey, buddy. Hey, can I ask you why you think it's okay to not wear a mask? And of course, this person was wearing 2 masks. So again, he said, can I ask you why you think blah, blah, blah? And my buddy just goes, no. And the guy was like, whoa, and my buddy's like, I said no. Just calm as a freaking pickle. Not a little less calm than a cucumber, because inside he wanted to fight. So kind of like that cucumber with a little zing, a little vinegar. But yeah, the guy just kept going and going and going. My buddy's like, dude, I don't want to be rude, but you asked me if you could ask me something, and I said no. So if you're going to be moral police, think about the way you frame questions, because you're going to get some answers you don't like. Anyway, I really never want to talk about COVID again. I really just don't. It's not an interesting topic anymore. It's not, it's relevant, sure, but it's been talked to death. And I swear, if somewhere I post about this and a little thing pops up that says, hey, if you want to know more about COVID or vaccines, go to blah, 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 blah.com, getvaccinated.com, and you'll be saved forever, johnsonandjohnson.org. I'm going to lose my mind. But they don't do that on podcasts, so we're chilling. Anyway, flying during COVID, international flight, is a bit of a disaster because, like I said, you have to have a negative test to fly. However, you have to wear a mask the entirety of the flight. And mine was like 10 hours. Luckily, the flight to Brazil in a massive aircraft had like 20 passengers. So I had a whole row to myself, was able to lay down and sleep, but it's tough to wear a mask that long. And of course, you don't have to wear it when you're eating, which makes no sense. Because it's not like if you're putting food in your mouth, you can't, the virus goes to bed and takes a little nap while you're eating. But I get it. It's like, well, you can't really eat with a mask, and you have to eat, but it's just, the logic has gone out the window a long time ago. And arbitrariness has taken a front seat. But, so yeah, that was not super enjoyable, but I just put a blanket over my head and slept and listened to music and podcasts and didn't wear my mask because a blanket was over my head. Or I would eat my little tiny baby meal for like 3 hours. Sir, can you, I'm still eating. Didn't you know I'm still eating? Also, I ordered 2. They're like, do you want the chicken or the pasta? And I was like, well, let's see, we have 20 passengers. I know you guys have food for like 300. I will take both. And here was the great response. Okay, we have to make sure everyone gets one first, and then I'll come back and get you a second if there's some left. And I'm like, I'm guessing there's like 280 left. So we should be fine. But I waited and I got my second meal. Also, I could be way off with, I have no idea how many passengers are on a large international flight, but there were a lot of vacant seats. I'm talking about the most boring part about my trip. So let's move on. We get to Brazil. The dollar's 5 to 1. So we're living like kings of Leon. Leon's in Spain. Kings of Brazil. And so yeah, we stayed in pretty nice hotels. We were gone 10 full days. 12 if you count like basically 2 days of travel, right? But 10 full days in Brazil, and I think I spent about $400 total, including hotels, Ubers, buses, taxis, food, souvenirs, touristy stuff. It was crazy. And I didn't catch COVID again. So I survived. I will talk about the moment where I maybe thought I wasn't going to survive, but that'll be a little bit later. A lot of people have asked me, I hate starting a sentence that way. You sound so stupid when people on social media are like, a lot of people have been asking me about, and they say like their workout program, their skin care routine, their how they fold towels. No one's asking you. And if they are, it's like 3 people. And so when you say, a lot of people have been asking me, I don't believe you right from the get-go. And I'm just like, okay, just tell me what you're going to tell me. Because I don't think a lot of people have been asking. Because I know I haven't been asking. Like, oh, I wonder what that girl's makeup routine is. Wonder where she gets her eyelashes. Certainly not from her eyes. Certainly not from the Lord. She must have just, yeah, I don't know. I don't understand anything about girls' faces and what they do to them on a daily basis. But, so basically, maybe 2 to 7 people have asked me, what was your favorite part about Brazil? And that's really, it's a really tough question, because the whole reason I went back was to see people. And obviously I knew I'd have time to do other things and go to the beach and do all these recreational things I couldn't do on my mission. But I really just wanted to reconnect with the Brazilian people, wanted to see people I taught and baptized and converted and all this stuff. And it wasn't just for like religious reasons. Like, of course, religion and my belief system and spirituality is tied in very tightly. But it was more than that. It was, I don't know, it sounds cheesy to say it was metaphysical, but it felt like it was just as beneficial and important for me to see them as it was for them to see me. And I almost can't put my finger on why, it's like I wanted to reconnect with a very, very important and impactful period of my life, which I haven't been able to do. A lot of people, when they're 19 to 21, they're in college or they're working a job and living in their parents' basement, or they're doing an internship, and those moments and times are impactful as well. But I don't know, they're easy to revisit. A lot of people go back to their old college, or they live in the city they went to college, and so this just felt different. It was such a wild, just life transforming time of my life, and it's like you leave and you're like, well, I don't know if I'll ever be back. Even though you plan to. Like I said in my last episode, you leave, and at 21 you have these grand notions that you'll be back very soon and very frequently. But life happens as it tends to do, and it's difficult to get back. It's expensive. It's time consuming. It's never convenient to take a 2-week trip anywhere for any reason. But you just have to make it happen, and traveling has to be somewhat of a priority, even though a luxury shouldn't be a priority. But it kind of conflicts a little bit. That's why you basically have two different kinds of people. You have people that travel a lot and people that don't travel at all, ever, or they go on 2 or 3 vacations in their whole life. So but to me traveling is important, and it's not about staying in 5-star hotels or eating fancy food or visiting these wonders of the world, whether it's the Great Wall of China, the Eiffel Tower, Sears Tower, whatever. It's not about those things. Those things are like, to me, they're like a cherry on top. You're in Paris, of course you're going to see the Eiffel Tower, or you're going to feel like an idiot. But I would never go to Paris to see the Eiffel Tower. I would never go to Brazil just to see Christ the Redeemer statue. Even something grander than that. I would never go to Brazil just to see the Falls do Iguaçu, the Iguaçu Falls. Even though they're majestic and crazy, it's like the Niagara Falls on I don't know, morphine. People always say on crack or steroids, but I'm thinking morphine on this one. Traveling's about connecting with people. It's about trying new things. It's about reconnecting with a chapter of your life from the past. Even, I don't know, it's weird. Sometimes you'll go someplace and you'll feel, I don't know, you'll feel things that remind you of your childhood or your adolescence, or a period in your life that was very important to you. And it's confusing, I don't know if it's the unique geography, if it's just the feeling of newness, being in a new place, seeing new things. It takes you back to years in the past when you experienced new things. So I don't know if I'm making a lot of sense here, but what I'm trying to say is my absolute favorite part of the trip was seeing people. you know, surprising people. There were people that I wanted to see that I hadn't seen in 15 years, and I didn't have their phone number, didn't have their address, didn't have their social media handles, didn't have anything, and I found them. There was, so the first lady I saw, and this was in my second area, my favorite area, and this was where I saw the majority of the people I visited. The first lady I saw, I did have her contact info, and, you know, we scheduled it, and we met up with her, and she was awesome. It was amazing. And it was just crazy how much her life had changed, and we have been connected on Facebook and stuff, but all we do is sometimes see each other's pictures. We don't even, you know, every once in a while, she'll comment on mine or vice versa. There'll be a tiny back and forth, and then see ya. But I didn't even know she had a 12-year-old son. I didn't know she had a child, and her child's 12. It's crazy, and she was so, oh my gosh. We get there, and I just can't believe how loving and selfless these people can be. So, you know, we're visiting with her. She made us some food. We're talking. We're catching up. You know, we're in this tiny little house. We're sweating. It's hot. It smells like a third world country does. You know, there's open sewage everywhere. There's just kind of a lingering stench in the air. But it's weird because it's nostalgic. It's like usually rotten feces doesn't kind of make you feel good, but this kind of did in a weird way. But you know, I'm talking to her, and I'm like, yeah, you know, we wanted to see Leticia, and we wanted to see Lucia, and blah 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 blah. But you know, it's just been so long. I don't, like, in my head, I know relatively where they live, but I could never just go find their house. And I looked and looked and looked in my old planners and notes, and I couldn't find their addresses. And it's just not super, I mean, the area I was in wasn't crazy, but it's not super safe to just walk around in the night with 3 white guys over 6 feet tall. Just because, you know, you stand out. It's so obvious that you're not from Brazil. And so she's like, I'll take you. And she doesn't have a car. So we just walked. And she showed us where they lived, and we surprised them. And we're gone for hours and hours and hours, just walking around the city, visiting people I hadn't seen for 15 years. And the first lady we visited, her name's Leticia. She had no idea under the stars that I was coming. And in Brazil, they don't really, sometimes they have little intercom systems, but they don't really have doorbells. And there's often like a gate or some sort of thing in front of the house. So you don't really knock on their front door. You clap. And so I clapped outside of her door, and she kind of peeks her head out. And she's, you know, she sees 3 6'3" white guys and a very, very black woman. And I think, you know, she recognizes the girl Priscilla. And she's like, Priscilla? And she's like, yeah, it's me. And then she's like, who are you? What? And and I you know, I yell out, do you remember an elder church? And she's like, oh my gosh, oh no, what? And terrible translation, by the way, because it's all in Portuguese. But she runs down, you know, these little cement stairs and opens the big metal gate, and we embrace. literally for the first time, because as an LDS missionary, you can't hug the opposite sex. We're very we're just strict about the female male dynamic on the mission. You're so, people if you look on the Twitter machine, people will say we're oppressive, we're sexually oppressed, especially as missionaries. But dude, we're just trying to focus. They give us wild rules so we can focus. You don't say the military's oppressive because they make you shave your head, or you can't do this, you can't do that. That's just how it is. That they have intense rules, so you focus. That's how the mission is. You can't hug girls. You give them a handshake. You can't kiss on the cheek. You can't do any of that stuff. You can't have, relations for 2 years. It's called a sacrifice. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of it, if anyone's ever done something like that, but it's not oppressive. You just can't do it. And you know what? If you want to do it so bad, you don't have to go on a mission. That's the beauty of it. So we literally hugged for the first time, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful to just reconnect and surprise people. And then we went to this other house, and we ended up, she didn't have much time. She was leaving. It was lucky she was even home when we went there. And so the next night we went back, and she made us. We ordered pizza, and which, by the way, in Brazil, they think it's not only okay, but they think it's important to put on ketchup and mayonnaise on their pizza. All their pizza, when you order it, it comes with sides of mayonnaise and ketchup. Gross. It's really gross. I understand cultural, food differences, and they have some weird pizzas I tried that are pretty good. They have like this, shredded chicken and cream cheese pizza that's pretty popular. It's not really cream cheese, but I don't really know what to call it in English, but it's similar to that. And it's a little weird. It doesn't really taste like pizza. It just tastes like some sort of pie. But it's good. It's pretty good. They often get weird and put peas and raisins and deviled eggs on their pizza, which I think are all inappropriate. But we just got like a cheese and pepperoni pizza. Also, their pepperoni is basically just like sausage. But they wanted to put ketchup and mayonnaise on the cheese and pepperoni pizza. Just stop. I understand if you want to put your weird toppings that you normally put on your pizzas there, but just with the mayonnaise and the ketchup, stop. So we had pizza the next night, and so after, and this lady's daughter just turned 16. She was 2 last time I was there, so it was just cool. Her daughter, I was like, hey, I remember you, but you don't remember me. And then I came home, after the trip, I came home and sent them pictures of me and the little girl when she was 2, that I'd taken on my really, really bad digital camera and printed out, but I printed them all when I got home. So I never had, they'd never seen those pictures. So it was a lot of really cool experiences like that. Anyways, we go to this next house, and this was probably just the best part of the whole trip. And bless the heart of my 2 friends, because they're just chilling. They're just along for the ride. But we did the same thing with my buddy. His mission was just northeast of mine, and so he was like, yeah, dude, when we're in your areas, we'll do your thing, and then when we're in my area, we'll do my thing. And then his brother was along for the ride. Doesn't know Portuguese, just happy to be there. But we warned him. We're like, dude, like, we're gonna see some cool stuff. We're gonna get weird on the beach. We're gonna have some wild tropical fruits. We're gonna have jackfruit. We're gonna have cupuaçu. We're gonna have cajá. We're gonna have archimine. We're gonna have all this weird stuff, and we're gonna have a blast. But we're gonna be visiting people for hours and hours at a time, and speaking rapid fire Portuguese. And he knows Spanish, so he gets little bits and pieces. But he was a trooper. He was a patient trooper. But yeah, we get to this this lady's house, and same thing. We hit her with that surprise. But she was out front hosing off her sidewalk, because you don't want dirt on your sidewalk, or you could get really sick. But yeah, just came up, surprised her. She about had a conniption, and then we went in her house for hours, and she kept calling her neighbors to come over. Come see the elders. Come see Elder Church is back. She'd go get, she'd tell her kids, hey, go get Claudia, go get Tatiana, go get Thais. Yeah, and people just kept coming. And there were people that we had known from that time, or some people we had taught, some people had been baptized. There was a whole little community would just come in this tiny little house, and it was just beautiful. And the whole time my buddies are just kind of kicking it. They're just relaxing, sweating their balls off and just accepting all the candy that this sweet sister was just making us take. She's like, I don't have any food prepared, and she just kept going into her closet and bringing out candy. And we're like, I think we're solid, we're good, we're just here to see you. And she's like, no. She'd run back in the closet, come back with a tub full of marshmallowy weird Brazilian candy. And yeah, the whole night was just about reconnecting. And I remember she asked me, this sister, she's in her 50s. She asked me, are you married yet? She might be in her 60s. Who am I kidding? But she's like, are you married yet, or whatever? And I was like, this is a question that it should be a simple yes or no, but sometimes it's just a little, depending on what I'm going through, it's a little bit triggering. I mean, it doesn't send me into a whirlwind of depression or whatever. It's just sometimes I'm just like, oh gosh, here we go again. No, I'm not married. I'm sorry. Haven't got it done. But she was so sweet. And of course it's a different culture down there, especially, within the church or out of the church. It's just not so, there's not such a pressure to get married. There's not such an expectation. And I was like, no, not yet. I haven't, blah, blah, blah. And I was, I kind of had in my head a little trite explanation I was going to rattle off. And she's like, well, that's fine. That doesn't matter, because you're going to find somebody that is perfect. It's just perfect. And I started to tear up, and it was just so, because it was so genuine. She didn't give a rip that I wasn't married. She wasn't disappointed. She wasn't she didn't feel bad for me, which, even though it was it's nice that somebody's sympathizing for you and they're sad for you, but it gets old. You don't want to walk around having everybody feel sorry for you, especially when it's not that tragic. It's one thing if you have, leukemia, then you're like, well, you should feel bad for me. Frick, I'm dying. But it's like, dude, I'm just not married yet. I'm just in my late extended 20s. As you know, that is my age. And so, yeah, it was refreshing. It kind of imbued me with love, and yeah, it was really special. And you know what? If we wanted, this could be a 7-hour podcast, and I'm gonna try to wrap it up fairly soon here. We've been going 35 minutes, but yeah, those were the highlights. And you know, there were other people and other moments, and there was a lot of just silly little intangibles that just thrust me back 15 years. You know, little smells, little shops we walked past that I remember walking past, little streets that I remembered that you can't believe you remember, you know, because you haven't thought about them for 15 years. But then you're back, and you just rushed back to that time. It's like, you know how it's so weird, the power of smell, but it's so weird how you'll smell something and that olfactory sense will trigger a memory instantly. And it's crazy how it happens. I mean, dude, you ever broken up with somebody and they left like a shirt or something at your house and it still freaking smells like them, and that smell will drive you crazy? Of course you have to get rid of that article of clothing. You have to return it, but sometimes returning it is bad because you don't want to see that person. You're not going to freaking mail it to them. So you should just throw it away, right? Or something. But it's crazy that what your smeller can do. What it can do to your brain. But yeah, we also, we saw a lot of really cool things. We went to some beautiful beaches, some amazing hikes. We basically we went on this one hike called Pedra de Gavia, which is Rock of Gavia. And we basically hiked through the jungle. Now, there was a bit of a path, but it was, there's literally like monkeys and snakes and crazy twirly vines that I've seen them before in Hawaii, but I haven't really seen them anywhere else. I'm sure they're all in any jungle you go through, whether it's in Costa Rica or the Amazon or whatever. But it's crazy because you're in the jungle. It's humid. There's lots of weird sounds. There's bugs everywhere. But, there was kind of this worked out path, and every once in a while there'd be just kind of some like stone steps or something that people have made along the years. But so we hike through this jungle, and it's super steep and it takes a while, and we get to the top, and the view is just of all of Rio de Janeiro, basically. And it's amazing, it's breathtaking, blah, 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 blah. But then we shouldn't have done the hike, because by the time we get to the top, we're trying to hustle, trying to beat the sun so we could get, a sunset pic, of course. But we get to the top and we're like, frick, dude, we got to get down because it's about to get dark and it's about to rain. And so, luckily our phones have flashlights, or we would be in a dark spot because the path was not super clear. Like during the day, it's fine, but we would have got lost in the jungle had we not had our flashlights. And so, yeah, we hiked back through the night and, turned out to be fine. Every once in a while you kind of slip and hit your shin on a rock or something, but it was pretty chill. What else? Okay. Probably two of my other favorite things, some of these hikes were so beautiful, but I'm not crazy about hiking. I like having hiked. I like having been someplace beautiful. I love the top when you get the view, and it's all worth it. But I hate the descent. I hate, it's just, most hikes, they're not beautiful until you're to the top. Some of them are. Angel's Landing is beautiful the whole way in Zines, but that's why I won't do a boring hike. If there's something cool to see at the top, if there's a waterfall, if there's a beautiful vista, I'll do it. But I'm not going to hike just to hike. So a couple of the other really, really cool things we saw, we went to the largest slum in Latin America. I think I've read that before. It might not be fully accurate, but those things are kind of hard to measure, just because if you go into a densely populated slum, it's hard to get an accurate census, hard to get an accurate count, but it's definitely the largest slum in Brazil. It's called the Rocinha, spelled with an R. Their R's are basically H's at the beginning of words. So it's the Rocinha, means like the little farm, or little farmland or whatever. And it has, again, disputed figures, but it has like 200,000 to 300,000 people in like 2 square kilometers, or it might be like 1.3 kilometers. It's crazy. And we went there, even though it was a bit ill-advised because it's pretty dangerous. The favelas, as they're called, the slums are called favelas. And again, moral police. Somebody commented on one of my Instagram captions and said the word slum was offensive. And I said, that's what it is. If like, dude, just read. And this was a friend of mine, so I responded, in a friendly manner, just saying I disagree. But it's like, dude, it's like somebody being offended because you're like, yeah, I had, my black friend came over, and you're like, whoa, why are you calling it black? Why does it have to be black? Why does it have to be about race? And it's like, dude, it's because when I say black, that differentiates. It paints a picture. Same as me saying, oh yeah, I have this tall friend. Oh, well, why does it have to be tall? Why can't it just be your friend? Because when I say tall, you picture a tall person. When I say black, you picture a black person. I'm painting a picture, okay? When I say slum, it means it's a slum, okay? What do you want me to say? The economically disadvantaged, blah, 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 blah. No, it's a slum. And the word favela is, what they say there. And even in like their maps and names of things, it'll be called the favela of blah, 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 or blah, blah, blah favela. And the direct translation is slum or shantytown. And so it's not, to me, it's not pejorative. It's just what it's called. So that kind of bugged me. But anyways, we're in this slum, we're in this favela, and we actually took a little tour. We hung out with this dude for like 3 days. He's a taxi driver / tour guide, and he just drove us around. And we're like, hey, what about this place? You want to take us here? You want to take us here? And he'd give us suggestions, and he was cool. And he was like 5'4", and he was a homie. And so, yeah, we went on this little tour. I was reading up about the place later, and it said a couple of years ago a tourist got shot. But, that was a couple of years ago, so we were fine. But the other spot was called the Escadaria Celarón. And Celarón is a Spanish word, which always confused me, because I had known about this place. Escadaria means staircase. So it's like the Celarón staircase. And it's pretty famous. It was in a Snoop Dogg music video. Beautiful. It's the name of the song, with Pharrell. It's a touristy spot. It's a lot of cool people, famous people have been there taking pictures. But it's cool because it's like right in the ghetto. It's a little bit dangerous, but a lot of touristy spots are kind of dangerous because, people know that they're going to be surrounded by gringos and people that don't know their language, and so they're easy targets. But we go there, and again, I had seen pictures and I had known about it, but I'd never been there. And it's just this beautiful, you can check my Instagram. I posted a bunch of pictures about it, but it's this beautiful staircase with these mosaics on it. It's this big, big, beautiful, crazy art project. And it was weird because I'm not the type of person that like goes into museums and like cries looking at a painting or is just terribly, terribly moved by I don't know, by physical works of art, I mean, sometimes they kind of get me. I was in Italy once, and our tour guide was telling us something about Michelangelo and this sculpture he did and how he just needed to do it, and it just his soul depended on. I can't remember the story, but it was really, really moving to me. But I need the story. Just seeing something, even if it's beautiful, I need a little bit of background. And so our tour guide, our homie, Alexandre is his name. That's a difficult way to say Alexander. Alexandre. But he was telling us that the artist, he was kind of this poor, starving artist that worked on this thing for years and years and like sold paintings in the streets and on those steps just so he could survive, because he did this thing like all day, every day, couldn't have a normal job. And he did it because, I mean, you do art for a million different reasons. It's a bit reductivist to say like, he painted this because blah, 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 or he wrote this because blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, there's a lot of emotions, a lot of reasons. Some of them maybe a little selfish and self-serving, and others a little more poetic and altruistic, right? But it was said that his pregnant wife had been killed, and he was so torn up and so distraught, he had to make this piece. He had to make this work of art. And like I said, there's thousands and thousands of little tile mosaics on these concrete steps, and in between there's cobblestone, and there's walls with the mosaics on them to the sides, and the stairs, there's like 4 cases of stairs or whatever, levels, and there's all sorts of little tiny paintings and etchings of pregnant women, and it's all kind of this same figure. It's like one pregnant woman, and it's obvious that she's pregnant. It's this huge belly, and it was very obvious in his work that he was grieving. And I don't know, it was really, 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 really moving to me. And the place it was in just kind of, it felt like an oasis, it's just this beauty in the middle of chaos and darkness. And so I just loved it. So if you have a chance to go there, if you're ever in Brazil, if you're ever in Rio, you gotta go. We went to all the other touristy stuff, the Christ Redeemer statue, the Sugarloaf, Ipanema Beach, Copacabana Beach, blah, blah, blah. But the Escadaria Celarón, that might have been my favorite. After, seeing the people and all that kind of sentimental stuff, this might have been my favorite spot we visited. And lastly, I'm going to tell a story of something crazy that happened to us. And it could have been much crazier. We avoided some potential danger, but we avoided real danger, but we definitely experienced some level of danger. So we wanted to visit this specific favela slum called Dona Marta. And Dona Marta is a famous slum for a few reasons. Michael Jackson shot a music video in there. The They Don't Really Care About Us song in the 90s. There's been books written about Dona Marta for its kind of fame about kind of the drug war there in Rio. It's kind of like you know how you can go to Colombia in Medellin, and you can do like a Pablo Escobar tour almost, and like visit those neighborhoods where Pablo Escobar reigned. Dona Marta is kind of like that. There's a there's like there's like the Michael Jackson Square, and there's a little trolley thing that takes you to the top of the hill, and you can take pictures. And there's a helicopter pad up there. Like, there's a lot of kind of cool touristy stuff, but it's also still insanely dangerous there. But they claim it's less dangerous now because they did sort of this whole pacification of some major slums pre-World Cup and pre-Olympics in Brazil and in Rio. But what happened is a lot of them, and I could talk about this whole pacification thing. That's a whole nother separate topic that if you're interested, you should, DM me. I'll send you some videos and some articles. It's really interesting. But the pacification basically ameliorated things for a year or two or 6 months or whatever, because the government basically went in with military police, got rid of all the major big drug dealers and whatever they could in an area, and kind of set up shop and kind of, had a little military base almost in this slum. But there's like 700 favelas in Rio de Janeiro alone. And so they couldn't go to all of them, and then their presence couldn't be maintained in all of them. And so it's tricky because a lot of these favelas, because they do have some tourism there, they claim to be safer now. But that's not always the case. So, we would talk to locals, and some people would say like, oh no, that's still really, really, really dangerous. And some people would be like, oh, it's, I don't know, it's better. It's whatever, But, so anyways, the internet had told me that it was safer now because of all the tourism and whatnot. And so we basically wanted to just go in. We wanted to see maybe the little Michael Jackson Square. They have like a bronze statue. Crazy, actually, a few years after the pacification, when things started getting bad again in that area, the drug dealers hung like an AK-47 around the Michael Jackson statue, basically saying like, hey, we run things now. And like, it went on the internet, everyone took pictures, and it was kind of like, we run the streets now. It was kind of a weird signaling. But anyways, we wanted to see the Michael Jackson Square. We wanted to see, there's these really cool like areas of painted houses, different cool colors, but they're like, they're vibrant. They're like red and yellow and blue and green and purple and violet and pink, and they're all like right next to each other, but they're like stacked like slums, which are usually just like brick and cement, brick and cement, brick and cement. And so it's cool to see. And so we wanted to go take some pictures and stuff. And so, and we were a little reluctant, a little nervous, but we're also like, dude, we've been to the whole scene. We've done this, we've done that. We lived here for 2 years. We know, we'll be fine. We know how to be safe, right? We know, you kind of get a feel when you're in an area when it starts to get dark and starts to get a little sketchy. And so we're like, we'll be fine. We'll gauge it. If it gets weird, we'll get out. So we took an Uber to the kind of the base of the hill. And the majority of these slums are built on hills. It's crazy how they build these homes on hills, but that's just how they are. And so usually the way it works is the higher up you get, the deeper into the favela that you get, the more dangerous it is. That's where like the drug dealers and all the major gangsters and kingpins, that's where they hang out. That's where they control things. And a lot of it is because it's kind of a labyrinth. It's kind of a crazy, windy roads and tiny alleys and stuff to get there. And so it makes it hard for police to get there. A lot of times there's little narrow things that only motorcycles can go through or whatever. And so we're like, okay, the place where the houses were that we wanted to take pictures, it was called Praça Cantão, which means Canton Square. And, online I was like, okay, it's like right at the base. So it's going to be pretty chill. So we get an Uber and he's like, you're going to Dona Marta? And we're like, yeah, we're three super white guys. What's the big deal? And he's like, okay. Takes us to Dona Marta, doesn't say a word to us, drops us off at the base. And he's like, yeah, you just walk up there a little ways and it'll be up there. So we're like, all right, we get out and there's something very unique about a Brazilian slum. I'm sure, they're very similar to any Latin American slum. Probably, culture aside, very similar to any slum in the world, whether it's in Nairobi or India or Bangladesh or wherever. They're very similar. There's often open sewage, there's loud music, because they're so densely populated, you just hear so much chaos. There's crying kids, there's dogs barking, there's music blasting, there's bars open, there's smoke somewhere, there's gunshots, there's, people playing poker, grandpas throwing darts, teenage girls in almost no clothing riding bikes. You got some possible hookers walking around over here. You got people selling ice cream. You got people selling brooms, people selling oranges. It's chaos. And I really like it. It's super interesting. It's cool. It's as youth would say, it's a vibe. It's a vibe, dude. It's a vibe. The favela, it's a vibe. So we start kind of walking up, and it's just, the chaos is extreme. And we're seeing everyone is staring at us like crazy because apparently where we're going maybe is a little bit less touristy than I had realized. And so we start walking up, and we're just getting looks like, what the hell are you guys doing here? But we continue our ascent, and we get to this little praça, this little square, and it's really little, and it doesn't look like it does in the pictures, because the pictures are probably, I don't know, they're maybe 20, 25 years old, and so, the paint's faded on the houses. There's a million crazy wires going through, so you can't really get a great picture unless you had a drone or something. And the kind of scary thing is, again, everyone's staring at us. My buddy's like, dude, I don't know, this is looking kind of sketchy. Maybe we should get out of here. And I was like, we're fine. And the reason it was maybe a little sketchy is because this square, it was this narrow road going up and up and up, and then it was kind of like a dead end, and that was where the square was. But then from that kind of dead end, like a car couldn't go any further, or motorcycle or anything, there was like all these little alleys jutting up, and little like cement staircases and little alleys you had to walk sideways through. We're going every which way, but it was like at the dead end, there's dozens and dozens of people. There's a bar, there's tiny little restaurants, there's people out there just chilling on their lawn chairs. And I'm like, okay, this is the main thing was we stood out and we looked like lost, because it wasn't, again, it was more touristy in my head than, maybe it used to be more touristy, but now they're like, what are three white guys doing here? And so I was like, all right. I didn't want to just turn around and leave, because that would look even more sketchy. Like, you guys came here, just looked around and left. And so, and in my head, I'm thinking like, frick, like they might think we're just like white guys coming in the hood looking for drugs. And so I was like, yeah, we better just take some pictures so it looks like we're doing something. And so I start taking a few pictures, and then I hear this guy say, "Tá procurando alguém?" Which means, you looking for somebody? And I turned around, because it was a bit of an aggressive question. It wasn't like, hey, are you looking for somebody? No, it was, you looking for somebody? And so I turn around, and there's this dude with an AR strapped around his body, an automatic weapon, which is a little disconcerting. My guy's in swimming trunks, sandals, backwards hat, no shirt, automatic weapon. And so I turn to him, and I see the weapon, and I'm like, okay. And I've seen this before on my mission, the drug dealers, that's how they roll around. They don't have a little pistol in their pocket. They have automatic weapons strapped around them. And so it's still a little bit alarming, but I was like, all right, I think we're cool. I'll just, And so I went up to him. I didn't want to look terrified. And luckily, I still speak good Portuguese, so I wasn't like, start speaking in English. So I was like, oh no, we're good. We're just we heard about these colorful houses. We want to take some photos or whatever. Thank you though. And he's like, kind of pauses, looks around, and he's like, all right, make yourself at home. And I was like, okay, nice drug dealer. So I go, I turn around, start taking a couple pictures, look to my right, and I notice a little card table full of little plastic baggies full of cocaine and stacks of cash. And I'm like, oh, wow, we better get out of here. And then that same guy is like, wait, come here. And he's like, I didn't know you meant taking pictures here. I thought you meant up at the view. He's like, you can't take pictures here. And, then it kind of hit me. I was like, well, yeah, he doesn't want us taking pictures of this drug lair. and so I was like, oh, yeah, no problem. We won't take any more. And he's like, no. I can't have those pictures on your phone. And then his buddy strolls up. He also has a weapon, and he's a little more aggressive. He's a little more like, hey, what are you doing here? Blah, 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 blah. And he grabs my phone. And I'm like, in that second, I was like, well, I don't have a phone anymore. That's fine. I wasn't gonna be like, no, you're not taking my phone. I was just like, oh, I don't own a phone anymore, and that's okay, because I own my life. And so I give him my phone, and he deletes the photos, scrolls through some other photos to make sure he got them all, and then hands it back. And he's just like, yeah, you can't take pictures here. And I was like, oh, totally, that's our bad. We'll just take off. And my buddies are just quivering behind me. Didn't say a word the whole time. And then he was cool. Then he was like, if you guys want, I'll take you to the top where you can take pictures at that viewpoint, blah, blah, blah. You just can't take pictures here. You know? Can't do it. And in Portuguese, they love a double negative. They'll say, you can't do it, nope. Can't do it, nope. You know, he'd say, não pode não. Não pode não. You can't no. The direct translation, you can't no. But he was like, yeah, I'll escort you to the top. And it was starting to get dark. And I was like, dude, the last thing I want to do is go on a field trip with a Kingpin. Even though it could have been wild, could have been really cool. We were like, dude, let's get the frack out of here. Because we also needed to descend and get to a place where we could get Wi-Fi to get an Uber before it got dark. And so we declined cordially, of course, but we were like, oh, no, we got to go, but thank you. And we hightailed out of there. But it was pretty crazy. And the funny thing is, and I wasn't thinking about it in the moment, but we got down the hill and I was like, wait a second. This guy doesn't know his way around an iPhone, because I can just recover those photos he deleted. They're just in the deleted folder. All I have to do is go back, select, and recover. And so that's precisely what I did. Again, they're not that cool of pictures, but now they're a very cool, wild reminder of that scary little moment. So I have those pictures. If you want to see them, DM me. Maybe I'll show you. Maybe I won't. I thought about just throwing them up on my story or whatever, but I was like, you know, on the off chance that these wild, you know, drug lords get word of this, they're not going to be happy. But the thing is, the Brazilian drug lords, as powerful as they are in Rio, they're not, you know, they're not the organized crime of the Italians or something like that. They're not going to hunt you down in another country and harm you. But I still was like, yeah, maybe I'd leave these off the internet out of respect for the Kingpins. But the photos aren't incriminating. They don't have that little card table full of drugs. They don't have the guys with the automatic rifles. But I think there's obviously dudes in the background, just in the photo, that are drug dealers and don't want to be photographed. So, fair enough. I'll leave it off the internet. So yeah, that was kind of wild. And I'm grateful that we didn't die. It's always nice when you don't die. So, yeah, that was my trip. It was wonderful and crazy and cathartic and spiritual and just a whole litany of adjectives, really. But I'm grateful that I was able to go. You know, it was cheap flights because of COVID, and I had a hefty flight voucher from a spike ball tournament I didn't go to because it got canceled because of COVID. So it all worked out great, and it was one of the cheaper trips of my life. And, you know, with the dollar being what it is right now, the cheap flights, it was perfect. It was perfect timing. It was kismet. And so I'm very grateful. Anyways, I'm sorry. This episode has taken me a while. I've been home like 2 weeks now. I meant to do it like a day or two after I got home, and I just didn't because I've been procrastinating and I've been a bad boy. So I'm sorry about that. I need to get back into the weekly episode grind. Got some new guests we're going to get on the show, so you don't have to listen to solo episodes no more. But listen, I appreciate you tuning in. I don't know how many people are listening to this. Maybe it's 3 people, or maybe a lot of people are listening to this years later when I've become ever so famous. And so now there's thousands and thousands of listeners. And so it's not like I'm just speaking to a few people or a handful of people, or more realistically, a few hundred people. That's really where we're at per episode right now. But maybe we're deep into the future and people are going back and listening to my old stuff. And this is it. This is an old episode. So thank you for going back in the archives and listening to episode 35 when we've got hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of episodes out. Because, I don't think I can ever catch Joe Rogan, but I plan on doing podcasts until forever. So thanks for listening. I love you guys. We'll catch you later.